first question is, what is the required investment? What is the expected ROI? What is the revenue? What is the profitability? And one question I always like to raise when I see a customer in this situation is, what will happen if you invest the same amount of money and energy in your services? Would you grow more? So that question needs to be answered. And anytime, whether you're a services business or a product business, anytime you're trying to launch something new, it's a separate venture for you. And that's going to suck up a lot of your resources, a lot of your energy. And you're taking a risk. You know, a lot of times for established companies, launching a new product is not such a big risk. Okay, that is going to save your company. But it could create serious issues. And especially if you are a publicly traded company, right? You have promised quarterly targets to your investors. And if you miss those targets because you're too busy developing another product line, another business line, that could become an issue for you. So one thing that is always good to remember here is what's known as Bill Gates' motivational principle. So he says, imagine you're on a ship, and the risk you're taking is going to blow a hole in the ship. And if that hole is going to be below the waterline, then you will sink. And if that hole is above the waterline, it's a risk you can sink into. It doesn't matter. It's a problem, a big problem that you will be covering for one minute. So I think that's a very good line to remember. And make sure you have sufficient confidence in your plan for the expected ROI, the required investment, etc. And how do you achieve that? My suggestion is to prepare a detailed business plan for your proposed product. And also to prepare a product roadmap. Product roadmap in my view is a great way to plan the product. And the moment I say planning, okay, so remember, I'm not saying all of this from the perspective of startups. If you're a startup company, the game is different. What I'm referring to here are established services companies who have certain number of staff on board, who have a steady income stream, who have the luxury of doing things whatever way they choose to do. I'm not saying that's entirely true, but still you have some measure. You're not under the same kind of financial pressure your startup would be. So under those conditions, launching a business without a proper business plan being created is a very different thing. And when I say plan, people don't always react in a very nice way to that. Because they think, why shouldn't I be building a product rather than spend 6 months on planning? I'm saying, no, don't spend 6 months on building a plan. You can spend some time on building a plan, maybe a month. And if you think that's if it looks good, you can start working on the product. And as the plan progresses, you can refine your plan. My favorite line here is the one from Dwight Eisenhower. So Dwight Eisenhower, as I'm sure all of you know, was the supreme Allied commander in World War II. He was the one who planned the entire Normandy invasion. He was the one who was basically responsible for freeing Europe from the tyranny of Nazi forces. And then he went on to become president. So one of his favorite, very, very well-known lines is, plans mean nothing, planning is everything. And there was a German philosopher and military strategist, I forget his name just escapes me. He said a very pertinent statement. He says, and this is again military, okay, this is not business world. He said, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. And so I think that's very true for military people. Of course, I'm not a military guy. I live in the business world, so my world isn't actually quite this harsh. But what happens is when I do my planning, the moment I start executing, a lot of the reality of the situation starts to take. Things happen that I did not anticipate. Somebody left that I was counting on to do something. Some competitor might do something that I was not expecting. Market conditions will change. So all of this I have to deal with. That's why your plan is tossed out of the window. But the important thing behind planning is to prepare. When you're trying to plan, you have spent time thinking about 25 different things. And having thought about all those types of things, you are far better prepared to engage in your battle, be it a corporate battle or be it a military battle. So next point is about financials. So I do see a lot of people wanting to start small and not place large bets right away. And I think that's a very good way of learning about the product business, understanding what this beast is really all about, trying to get a good handle on things. But at the same time, in the long term, if your products are not going to give you sufficient revenue growth, high revenue, that's a question that is very pertinent question that you have to ask yourself. And so, couple of my thoughts from what I've seen is, number one, if you are a small company or a smaller company, not small, you should only consider products that will impact the second most significant digit of your revenue line. So if you are a 100 crore company or a $100 million company, so if you can't build a product that will at least get you $10 million in profit, or not profit, at least $10 million in revenue, or 10 crores rupees in revenue, then I think building that product is more trouble than it's worth. Because it does require a significant amount of effort, significant amount of commitment. And what you're getting out of it is not enough to keep you going. So I think it's a very important point to consider. Now if you're IBM and you're $100 billion in revenue, second most significant digit means $10 billion. You're not even going to find a product that will immediately give you $10 billion. Even if it's not immediately in 5 years, that's still a big power. So what you will see Fortune 500 companies typically do is they'll put a floor. They will say anything below 250 million per year in revenue we are not doing. And I think that's a good practice for even smaller companies to follow. I'm a 100 crore company today. Anything that gives me 10 crores or 15 crores or whatever that number is your total revenue. Below this, I don't want to touch it because the analogy of a lion trying to hunt rats, right? You could be successful on every hunt, but you are not eating enough by that hunt, and you're consuming more energy in the hunt than what you're gaining as a result of eating that animal. So that analogy has to be kept in mind. The third point here is the value proposition. So personally my view is that, and I think most of you agree with this, is that if your customer doesn't have a good ROI from your product, you don't have a choice. And the ROI can't always be good. There are times when you're buying an infrastructure product, and when you buy an infrastructure product, without that your business is not possible. But you can't calculate an ROI. So the term ROI is used very loosely here. My point is, if your customer doesn't see very clear and direct value from your product, then I don't think you have a business. And so when you do your business planning, I think it's worthwhile to engage in understanding the customer side of things as to how does the customer see the ROI. There are only so many reasons why people buy things. And I'm talking B2B here. I'm not talking about, my son wants to buy iPhone because it's a cool phone. Okay, so that's a very different thing. I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about, say, B2B products. But there are only so many reasons why people would buy it. Either they buy it because it's an infrastructure product without which they. And I'm not talking about months and months of analysis. I'm not talking about that. A lot of the analysis, especially if you are starting out, can be done very quickly. And you can get there 90% of the way very quickly. Okay. In fact, if you see most of this kind of analysis, it's the last 10% of achieving that real mental comfort that you are talking about. That takes a very long time. Let's say you are a taxi cab company and you have X number of taxis. And you go to them and say, I'll sell you this fleet management system. Install one in every taxi, and then you have a dispatcher server in your central office, from which people can call you and say, I want a taxi in such and such location. And from here you can pick up the customer and drop him off where, whatever such situations. So, because of the inefficiencies in the system, let's say your taxis are able to do 10 customers per day. Okay, I don't know much about taxis, I'm just giving you random numbers here. So the value proposition is very simple. If you put this thing in, instead of 10 customers per day, you can do 11 or 12. Okay. And if your average revenue from a customer is 100 rupees, so your revenue increases by 100 rupees per day per taxi. Now the cost of the system is such that you're going to spend whatever number of rupees. So if you say, let's say you have 100 taxis, then each one is going to get you 100 rupees per day. So whatever that adds up to. So, and you have spent so much money. So can you compare the two amounts and see what is your recovery period? And if this is the case, then you can very quickly get an answer as to what that recovery period will be. Now, of course, there are always assumptions about assumption is a bad word. I don't like to use that word. there are estimates of what the actual impact will be. And talking to the customer might say, but because of this reasons, I don't think I'm going to get 12, I might only get 11 per day. And then you say, okay, if 11 is the case, then instead of your recovery period being 18 months, I mean, it goes. So all of this can be, this is a very simple example that can be done. There are examples of, go back to the X-ray machine, and if you're trying to launch a good hospital, at certain level, at certain size of the hospital, you can't operate without an X-ray machine. Okay. A neighborhood hospital can operate without an X-ray machine. If you're trying to build a good prominent hospital with 500 beds, you don't operate without an X-ray machine. So I think that's table stakes. You have to have that. So at that point, you don't have to make a sales pitch about why you should have an X-ray machine. It's about why yours is better, or why it's a better value for you, almost. So this changes from situation to situation. So you have to deal with it accordingly. So there are three things mainly you have to look at in this kind of situation. What is the demand side? What is the market side? What is the supply side like? I mean, why are you in a unique position to build this product and supply the market demand after we have established the market? And after doing all this, what is the, from a business, purely from a commercial, purely from an economic standpoint, what is to be gained by all this? And that you have to nail down in a business model, saying, this is an investment. I have invested so much money, I want you as an investor to invest so much money. And over this time, we expect to capture this much market share, and then we want to build this business to such and such level. So all of that has to be well laid out. For an entrepreneur, some of these decisions can even be emotional. I mean, there are people who feel very passionately about a particular industry or a particular product, and they'll say, I know I want to do this. And they'll go ahead and do it without a lot of thought. And as an entrepreneur, if you have the luxury of doing all that, assuming you are willing to face all the risks and challenges that go with it, it's entirely your life's choice. Things in parallel. I mean, if you just go too deep down the road of actually building a product without thinking about the market aspects and financial aspects, someday you might find yourself in trouble. And if you just stay in the office trying to develop business plans without some proof of something that exists already. So as an angel investor or VC, you won't fund somebody because there's a great business plan. You will fund somebody because there is evidence, first of all, of capability of building that product, and also secondly because there is evidence of market interest. So you will look for those things. You will look for a POC. This model is definitely shifting in the direction that you talked about, with the advent of web technologies and all these types of things. If you're launching a web type of product, something web service, there was a very interesting model that I saw the other day about a lot of these things about customizing things, taking orders over the web and customizing things. So people will actually not have anything else in the back. They can very quickly set up a website. In a week's work, you set up a website and you put it out there. And you try to advertise as little as possible without spending a lot of money. That's what I mean. And on a shoestring budget, and try to reach out to as many people as possible and see what the reaction is. And if you get a good reaction, so you have a way of market testing the product you're trying to launch, even before you have done anything. So the amount of risk involved here is very less. So that is absolutely the case. I mean, no matter what you're trying to do, no matter how you're going about it, you should try to minimize the risk at this stage by actively building the product, trying POCs, going and talking to the customers. I didn't say all those things in that form here because when I teach in my class about product lifecycle management, I talk about all those things. This not being a discussion about that topic, some of that's left out. Any other thoughts, questions? Okay, so strategy. So the first bullet here that says you have to stay within your domain is something I really don't have to say to services companies because services companies by and large are very, they make good decisions, well thought out decisions. They are very conservative in their nature. So I don't have to really say this. But generally it's better to stay in a domain that you know well. Secondly, you have to engage in sufficient amount of industry analysis, market analysis, etc. to make sure you don't miss something obvious. I'll show you in one of the upcoming slides what kind of analysis you can do. And we'll go into this in a little bit more detail after that. And then the earlier point about interacting with customers. So there are two schools of thought here, right? You can do